Now let's prepare our scene for final touches, and we'll need to position our camera and set it up for the final render. And you can see we already have camera in place right here. So you can just hit 0 on a numpad or use the tilde key and choose view camera. So let's hit 0. And this is your camera view. Of course, this is too close, and also it's perspective camera. So you can see how the objects are large in the front, and as it goes back, it goes smaller and smaller, and there's quite a lot of perspective distortion. And for this kind of stylized and really geometric illustration, I really like to use isometric view or orthographic projection, which is a mathematical model how to display 3D graphics. It doesn't have anything to do with reality, so it's purely mathematical, and it can be only achieved in 3D software. So let's select the camera. You can just click on the frame here, on the camera frame, or you can select it here in the outliner. And now let's go to the output settings here, and we'll change the resolution. The standard resolution for photos, for example, is 3:2 or 4:3. I like to use 4:3 format, which has like more digital legacy. So let's enter 1600 here for X, and for Y 1200, and we'll have different ratio. And now let's go to the camera settings right here in the object data properties, and we'll switch the camera type from perspective to orthographic, and right away you will see how this changed, and everything is nice and perpendicular. There is no distortion, no perspective. And to be able to go outside, you cannot move the camera because this is purely mathematical parametrical model. You will need to go to the camera setting and only change the orthographic scale like this. So let's go something like 13 here. And additionally, you can rotate the camera to change the angle from which you are viewing your scene. Of course, you can start rotating your camera like this, but right now the cursor will come into place. As I mentioned before, you can use it for transforms and rotation. And if you go up here, you can see by default the pivot point for transformation is the median point for the object. Most of the time that's the origin point, but right here you can switch this to 3D cursor. And now if you start rotating on the Z-axis, for example, so let's press R then Z, you will see the camera rotates around that cursor. Let's hit escape to go back. And the same way we can rotate around the local axis. So you can see right here, we are now in the global settings. So if I press R and then X, I'll be rotating around the global X-axis in a weird way like this. You can see it highlighted, and we're rotating around the global X-axis. But now I want to rotate around the camera's X-axis. Now if I go to the transform and switch back to the median point, you will see this is the global X-axis. Now if you change this to local, you can see it changed, and now the camera can be moved up and down around its local X-axis, which is exactly what we want, but we want to use that 3D cursor. And now we are able to move the camera around its local X-axis around the cursor like this. And we can do that from camera. So let's hit 0 again, and we don't need the transform gizmo because we know shortcuts, of course. So let's press R and then X and rotate, and this way we are able to control this kind of angle. Let's right click. And there's one more thing you can do. You don't need to switch this to global and local anytime you need to use this. You can press the axis shortcut twice if you want to do that transformation. So let's press R, then X, and then X again to switch to the local view. And now we're doing the same thing. So you can see how these shortcuts are an amazing way how to speed up your workflow. Normally you would need to switch your origin point, you would need to go and switch to local, use transformation and play with a bunch of gizmos. Right here I can just switch the origin point, press R then X twice and start rotating. So this is like seconds saved. And if you account for that for a larger project, it will add up, trust me. So let's move it up like this so we see it from a better angle. And now you can press G then Z and move the camera up and down to position it a little bit better like this. And finally, we can add some background, because when we are going to be render this, there's nothing around our object, so there would be only like a single color, and I like to place like a background play under my object, so it kind of reacts to light and creates a nicer illustration with a bunch of like colorful gradients. So let's press Shift A and we'll add a plane. And right here, we are not modifying the shape of this in any way, so we can just scale it in the object node. So press S and scale it up like this, so it goes outside of the camera bounds. And this will be our background. So let's go to the material settings and let's create a new one, and we'll give this background some color. So we can start, for example, with something blue like this. It will create a nice contrast, and we can move on to the next part.